You wake up before the sun clears the horizon. No alarm, no phone buzzing on the nightstand, just your body deciding it is time. You step outside, the air is cold and sharp. Somewhere nearby, a fire from the night before is still smoldering. You are hungry, not the kind of hungry that comes from skipping lunch. The kind that will not go away until you find something to eat, and there is no guarantee you will. For most of human history, this was every single morning. No supermarket 10 minutes away, no refrigerator humming in the corner of the kitchen, no certainty at all that today would bring enough food to survive it. So here is the question, could you actually do this? Could you last a single day as a hunter-gatherer? The honest answer is probably not, and the reason is not the one you are imagining. You are probably picturing spears and lions and life-or-death chases across the savannah. That is the version movies sell you, but that is not what would actually break you first. What would break you first is everything else. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Lee traveled to the Kalahari Desert to live among the Ju-Honsi, a group sometimes called the Kung San. He wanted to answer a simple question: how much time does it actually take to survive as a hunter-gatherer? He expected a brutal answer: long days, constant labor, a life defined by scarcity. Instead, he found something that stunned him. The adults he studied spent around 15 to 20 hours a week finding food. That is it. 15 to 20 hours to feed an entire family for an entire week. The rest of the time went to resting, socializing, storytelling, and doing what looked, frankly, a lot like relaxing. Lee published his findings, and a few years later, the anthropologist Marshall Sahlins used research like this to coin a phrase that flipped the popular imagination upside down. He called foraging societies the original affluent society. Not affluent because they owned more. Affluent because they wanted less and needed far less time to get it. Compare that to now. The average person today spends decades of their life working just to afford rent, food, transportation, and healthcare. Across a lifetime, that adds up to somewhere around 90,000 hours of labor. 90,000 hours to survive in a world that is, by almost every material measure, safer and richer than anything your ancestors knew. Doesn't that seem backwards? So if hunter-gatherers worked less than you do, why could you not just walk into that life and succeed? Because the 15 hours Richard Lee measured were not the easy part, they were the practice part. Finding food in the wild is not about walking until you spot something edible. It is about knowing, with total certainty, which of the hundreds of plants around you will feed you and which ones will kill you. The anthropologist James Sussman, who spent years living with and studying the Ju-Honsi decades after Lee, described just how deep that knowledge runs. Hunters he worked alongside could identify a single animal's tracks well enough to know not just the species, but the individual animal, its age, and how long ago it had passed by. That kind of knowledge takes an entire childhood to build. It is not something you pick up over a weekend, no matter how many documentaries you have watched. And it is not only about finding food, it is about not becoming food. Every rustle in tall grass could be wind, or it could be something with teeth. Every unfamiliar animal call carries information about what is nearby and how far away it still is. Your ancestors did not think about this consciously. It was instinct, sharpened by a lifetime of paying attention to a landscape that could kill them if they stopped. You have spent your life in rooms with locked doors. That instinct in you has gone almost completely quiet. So let's reconstruct what your day would actually look like. You wake at dawn already thinking about food because there is no pantry to fall back on. You leave camp with a small group. Maybe you are tracking, maybe you are digging for tubers buried under packed sun-baked soil. Either way, you are reading the ground like a page of text, a bent blade of grass, a faint depression in the dirt, a scent carried on the wind. Information that means nothing to you right now means everything to the person walking beside you who grew up reading this exact land. Say the group picks up fresh tracks. Now the entire pace of the day changes. You move slower, quieter, watching the wind direction so your scent doesn't give you away. A successful hunt might take hours of patient, careful pursuit, not because the animal is faster, but because you have to outthink it, reading its exhaustion, guessing where it will rest, closing the distance one careful step at a time. There is no guarantee of success. Many days end with nothing to show for the effort but tired legs and an empty stomach, which is exactly why the plant knowledge and the tuber digging matter just as much as the hunt itself. By midday, the heat is brutal, so the group rests in whatever shade it can find. This is not laziness, it is strategy. Moving during the hottest hours wastes water your body cannot easily replace, and there is no bottle in your bag to refill. In the evening, everyone gathers back at the fire. This is where a huge amount of the actual work of hunter-gatherer life happens, and it is not physical work at all. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied firelight conversations among the Juhonsi and found that nighttime around the fire was when people told stories, resolved conflicts, and passed down the accumulated knowledge of the group. Daytime conversation, she found, tended to stay practical and immediate, focused on tasks and complaints. Nighttime conversation built culture, memory, and trust. That fire was not just for warmth. It was the school, the courtroom, and the archive, all burning in one place. This is also how children learned everything they would eventually need to survive. Not through lessons or textbooks, but by sitting close to the fire, listening to stories that carried real survival information wrapped inside them, and by following adults out into the bush, year after year, until the knowledge simply became part of them. By the time a person reached adulthood, they were not just strong. They were an entire library of the local land, memorized through repetition, not memorized through effort. This is the part that would actually break you, not the walking, not the heat, not even the hunger. It is the sheer weight of knowledge you do not have. You do not know which roots are poisonous. You cannot read a broken twig 50 meters away. You do not know how to coax a flame out of nothing but friction and patience. Every one of those skills took your ancestors years, sometimes an entire childhood, to build. You would be starting from zero in an environment with almost no room for beginners' mistakes. What happens when the plant you guess is safe is not? It is tempting to assume that once agriculture arrived, everything got easier. More food, more stability, surely that counts as an upgrade. The archaeological evidence tells a very different story. Skeletal remains from early farming populations show a measurable decline in average height, an increase in dental disease, and clear signs of nutritional deficiency compared to the foragers who came before them. Farming produced more total calories, but those calories came from a narrower range of crops, which meant a less complete diet overall. Farming also meant staying in one place, which meant denser populations living closer together, which meant, for the first time, epidemic disease had somewhere to take hold and spread. In a lot of measurable ways, agriculture was not an upgrade to daily life. It was a trade, more food security in exchange for worse health, harder labor, and far less free time. So the 15 hours a week that Richard Lee measured did not disappear because farming was easier. They disappeared because farming was a bet that eventually locked entire populations in, whether or not it actually made any individual life better. Once a population had grown to depend on the fields, there was no easy way back to the forest and the 15-hour week. The trade, once made, was almost impossible to undo. Which brings us back to you, right now, waking up to an alarm instead of your own body's rhythm, heading into a job that exists because somewhere back down the line, an ancestor chose the granary over the campfire. You still wake up hungry in a sense, just not for food. You are hungry for time, for rest that is not scheduled around someone else's demands, for a fire to sit around at the end of the day with nowhere else you are supposed to be and no notification pulling your attention away from the people sitting beside you. Your ancestors had that fire and 15 hours a week to earn it. You have refrigerators, supermarkets, and running water, and somehow still not enough time. So maybe the real question was never whether you could survive a day in their world. It is why you built a world that makes you long for theirs.